Hello everyone, my name is Adam and welcome back to another League of Legends beginner guide, and here we go through my tips and tricks. So my first tip if you want to gain elo is getting vision control. Now this can happen in a few ways. Number one everyone pretty much knows about is warding. Now in the lower elo you tend to see a lot of people who don't particularly understand warding or don't do enough of it. I think that everyone in the team should ward, bar maybe the ADC, because you want all his gold going towards damage items, and he also has a support which is warding for him. But vision control should happen from everyone else. I prefer to main mid, so I always have a pink ward and a green ward, just so I know where, if I'm getting ganked, then it helps my team maybe knowing where the enemy jungler is. But vision control can also mean just being aware of what's going on in your mini-map. I mean, if you're playing jungle, you need to know where their enemy jungler is. So, for example, if their enemy jungler is in the top lane, that could be an opportunity for you to maybe take the Drake in, because there's no chance he'll be able to get there and contest the fight. Now, a lot of people I think don't understand how important vision control can be, and they think the extra expense of wasting money on wards can be used for items. But in the lower elo, you see so many people pushing out lanes when they have no idea where the rest of the team is, and it just presents an easy opportunity to get a gank and a kill for the other team, which then sets them up for other objectives such as the Drake, the Baron, or they're able to push down a tower because you're a man less. For my second tip, I think it's very important that you know precisely what's going on in your build. A lot of people seem to build the same items regardless of what the enemy team actually has. So if the enemy team has a lot of magic damage, you should be building magic resist, and a lot of people don't seem to understand that your builds can change depending on the other team, and that seems to cost them a lot, because then they just get shut down without really understanding why it was such an easy team fight for the other team. And this can also go for a game which you're maybe losing. A lot of people seem to think if they're losing they need to build as much damage as they can to try and win the team fight. That couldn't really be further from the truth. You need to try and survive until later on in the game where your items start to even out. You have to build defensive items and wait for the enemy team to make a mistake, which you can then capitalize on. And if you're at a lower elo, quite generally they will make mistakes. Now my third tip is more for people that have just started playing ranked. I remember when I first played ranked, I thought I had pretty good mechanics with the champions that I knew, but then I realized that my champions got banned pretty much straight away because they were so regardless as overpowered. So I think if you are starting ranked, my first thing to say would be try and get as big a champion pool as you can possibly get. Try and learn as many champions as you can. And this can work in two ways. This can allow you to use champions that counter the other champions that have been selected on the other team, and it also allows you to understand more of what's going on from the other champion. Now I imagine a lot of people who start rank come up against champions that perhaps they haven't played themselves or they haven't faced before, and all that means is that they just get completely destroyed, not because their mechanics of their own champion is bad, it's because they simply don't understand what the other champion is doing. So understanding, so my tip for people who are starting ranked is just get your mechanics as good as possible, and try and learn as many champions as you can so you know exactly what they are, what you're coming up against. Now tip number 5 is very important that you know exactly what you are doing in the lane. Are you trying to farm? Are you trying to freeze the lane? Are you trying to push the enemy team back and take a turret? Very important that you know what you're doing in the lane. So that's just a couple of examples. Another example could be maybe if you're in the mid lane and the enemy jungler then decides that, the enemy mid laner decides he's going to go roaming, you don't always have to follow him. You can push down objectives, and sometimes it's just more important just to get as many objectives as you possibly can. And that actually brings me on to my next tip, and that is always try and take an objective. If you win a team fight, sometimes it's best not to go chasing the last man to get the ace. You can just go push down a couple of towers and maybe get an inhibitor instead of getting the one kill. So I think that's probably the decision making of players at lower elo isn't as good at higher elo, and it's those kind of decisions, knowing exactly what objectives to go for and when to go for them. And that generally comes with experience of playing the game and just knowing when and when not to do certain things. Now the next tip is more of a preference, whether or not you prefer it. I advise you to experiment with it because I say most people would find it easier, and that is smart casting, which is where instead of when you press a Q, W, E or R and you have like the chance to line it up it just automatically does it to wherever your mouse points. Now, I say the vast majority of champions this is better for. There are a few where having the actual line is of benefit to you, such as Blitzcrank. I'd say he's probably easier if you don't have Smartcast on, but again, that is all up to you and it's just a preference, but it's something that you can try and is very easy to get used to. And for those of you who want to try out with this, all you have to do is go into the settings in game and you just have to change the hotkeys. You can Smartcast while holding shift, so if you go shift Q then it will go automatically, but most people prefer it if you just switch your Smartcasting with normal casting around, which is very easy to do. And last but not least, we have my final tip. Now my final tip is learn how to farm under the tower. The reason I find this is so important is because if you do go behind in lane, I say the best way to do that is just don't feed, and that is the easiest way to not feed is just to play safe under your tower. So if you learn how to farm under your tower, you are able to maintain the same CS as your opponent, but you will not die if he managed to get ahead of you, which allows you to get back in the game. So the best way to CS under a tower is for the melee minions, which are the ones at the front, they take 2 tower hits and then you can then hit them and you will get the CS for that one. And the mage ones, which are the ones in the back line, depending on the champion you're using, you may have to hit them, allow the tower to hit them and then hit them again, or you may just let the tower hit them and then you can kill them yourself. It depends with how fed you are, and it depends on the champion you are using. Now, this doesn't mean that you only have to learn how to CS under a tower. I think it's very important that everyone should be able to CS as much as they possibly can, because you see in some games where the ADC CS will differ by 100. Now, 100 times, say, 15 gold, you're almost an item down just through CS, and then that leads to more kills, and that's how a snowball effect can happen in a game. So there are all my tips and tricks for lower elo if you're trying to gain elo. If you have any other tips whilst watching this which you think may help other people, then feel free to comment in the section below, and if you enjoyed the video then be sure to like and subscribe.